Welcome to the Gibson Museum of History. Today we're going to show you artifacts of ancient Rome that represent the rise and fall of this great civilization. Without further ado, let's visit the rise of Rome. This first artifact is a rendering of a typical Roman soldier. The ancient Roman army was a grand army that, at its biggest, probably contains 500,000 soldiers. The army is important to the rise of Rome because they expanded the republic. They brought the civilization more land, citizens, and business through conquerings. The next artifact we're going to look at is the government. The picture shown here is of a Roman government official proclaiming to the public. The ancient Roman government was referred to as a republic for years, then as an empire for the majority of its existence. The Roman Senate was a key aspect of its government. It acted as the advisory board for Rome and everything political and non-political for events that happened. The government was part of the rise of Rome because it gave the civilization law and order and allowed the republic to flourish and morph. Our next artifact of ancient Rome is ancient Rome's expansion. Without expansion, ancient Rome would not even have a spot in the history books. Ancient Rome's expansion increased the size of the land to 1.93 million square miles. The next artifact we have is geography. The photo pictured here is one of the Dolomites, located in Italy. Mountains are one of the ways geography helped Rome rise. They provided a natural barrier from nomads or other invading civilizations. Rome's location also helped it flourish. Being located on the Mediterranean Sea is a huge advantage in trading and learning innovative things from other civilizations. To end the artifacts of the rise of Rome, we have a quick video summarizing the Roman Republic.
Hello friends! Welcome to a new Happy Learning video. Today, we're going to learn about the Roman Empire. Legend has it that Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, two brothers who had been raised by a wolf. But that's just a legend. Rome was founded almost 2,800 years ago with the union of several villages in Italy. At first, it was a monarchy. Those who commanded were the kings, but later it became a republic. Do you know what that is? A republic is a form of government where there are no kings, but politicians make the decisions they think are convenient. The Republic of Rome lasted several centuries until about 2,000 years ago, when what we know as the Roman Empire began. In an empire, all power is in the hands of an emperor, who is like the king of kings. The Romans conquered all the nations of the Mediterranean: Greece, Egypt, Syria, France, Germany, and also the Iberian and Celtic people of Hispania. They even arrived in Britannia, now known as England. But how did the Romans live? Roman society was divided into several groups. The patricians were the nobles. They had a lot of power. They were politicians and military men, rich and powerful. Below them were the plebeians, the people. They were farmers, artisans, and workers in general. And finally, in the lowest part were the slaves, who used to be the prisoners of war. War was a very important activity for the Romans. Their armies were huge and formed by fearsome soldiers called legionaries. Thanks to them, they conquered all corners of the Mediterranean. The Romans were also great engineers and architects and created very orderly cities with many amenities. They had aqueducts to carry water from one place to another, bridges to cross rivers, circuses, theatres, spas, and schools. Roman children went to school, like us. They also built roads, and this made it a lot easier to get from one side of the empire to the other. The Roman Empire ended in the 5th century when the Germans invaded Rome. It was at that very moment, with the fall of the empire, when the Middle Ages began. But that's another story. As we always tell you, it is very important to know the past.
Now we transition into the fall of Rome. Our first artifact of this decline is a painting of plebeians. The plebeians were unhappy with their treatment in Rome. Most of them became homeless because the wealthy class of Rome would end up with their land. The plebeians revolted and fights and internal battles were started. Some officials dedicated their work to helping the plebeians and making the social balance more equal, but those officials either got killed or were forced to stop their work. Our next artifact of the fall of Rome is a painting of barbarians camped outside Rome. Basically, anyone not in the Roman Empire was a barbarian. The most well-known barbarian attack on Rome was Attila the Hun and his army of, the Huns. The barbarians ransacked Rome and terrorized their civilians. The barbarians contributed to the fall of Rome because they caused the empire money to cover the damage brought on and drove or killed many people out of the empire. The next artifact observed is a head sculpture of Diocletian. Diocletian is thought to have brought on the fall of Rome because he split up the empire. He thought splitting the empire would have a good outcome because it had gotten so big, but actually it left the empire more susceptible. Now it was easier to attack Rome because they were divided, and it didn't take long for the two halves to continue independently. Up next, we have a painting of Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus and the cross are the most well-known symbols of Christianity. Christianity is thought to have sped along the fall of the empire because of its monotheistic views. Before Christianity, Roman emperors were seen as part of the pagan Roman gods. Now, with Christianity, the majority of the population sees the one true God as their only God, and the emperor's popularity starts faltering. Emperors will start losing credibility and their authority will weaken. To wrap up the fall of the Roman Empire, we have a short video summarizing its fall.
In this tutorial, we will be examining a question that historians have debated for centuries. Why did the Roman Empire fall? At its height, the Roman Empire controlled the entire Mediterranean world, from Spain in the west to Britain in the north, all the way to Persia in the east. It encompassed over 2 million square miles of territory and over 60 million inhabitants. Roman technology had spread all over Europe, and Roman roads linked the entire empire with its economic, military, and cultural hub, the city of Rome itself. Rome didn't fall in a day, but over the course of more than 100 years, it slowly decayed and was unable to defend its empire. It did not crumble because of one reason, but rather a combination of reasons that took a toll on the empire's military strength and its economy over a long period of time. The traditional argument for the fall of the Roman Empire relies on the barbarian tribes that had begun invading Roman lands in the 4th century AD. The Huns invaded from the east, pushing the Germanic tribes like the Goths and Visigoths into Roman territory. The Roman armies were unable to deal with mass migration of barbarian tribes into their lands. In 410 AD, a Visigoth general even sacked the city of Rome itself. This is not the entire explanation, however. Rome was crumbling from within, not just from without. Severe corruption in the government, as well as unstable leadership, spelled disaster. A series of poor emperors led the empire to financial ruin. Some emperors were even assassinated in the chaos of civil war. Such an environment did not give the people hope in the government. Rapid military expansion and conquest was also expensive and depleted the empire's coffers. Wealthy citizens tried to get out of taxation. Eventually, the treasures of war and slaves dried up, and rapid inflation further weakened the economy. With such a lack of money, the empire was unable to field enough troops to protect its borders from barbarian incursions. In the 3rd century, the Emperor Diocletian divided the Roman Empire into 2 halves. While this made the empire easier to rule in the short term, in the long term the 2 halves drifted apart. It made it more difficult for the western half to survive. They had to rely more and more on mercenaries to protect them, and these mercenaries had little to no loyalty to Rome. They only cared about getting paid. A combination of these internal and external pressures created a situation that even a strong leader would have had trouble dealing with, let alone corrupt and sometimes crazy emperors. One final factor dealt with religion. In the 1700s, the historian Edward Gibbon theorized that the spread of Christianity had also contributed to the fall of Rome. In the early days of Rome, the state religions celebrated Rome itself. The Roman gods symbolized civic virtue and the expectation of service and sacrifice in the name of Rome. Christianity spread a different set of virtues. Its followers were focused on the return of their Messiah and on preparing themselves for heaven after death. Many Christians questioned the emperor's divine status, and a belief in the glory of Rome gave way to a focus on the glory of God. Very simply, Christianity eroded the civic patriotism and loyalty that had helped Rome grow and expand for centuries. This process was finalized when the Emperor Constantine made Christianity the official religion of Rome. Explanations in history are never monocausal. That is, there is never only one explanation for a historical event. Life is more complicated than that. It's important to understand that though some causes have more impact than others, that is, the barbarian invasions and the taking of Rome, other causes can have a part too. Without corruption, financial difficulties, and a lack of civic virtue, Rome could have fielded larger armies that could have possibly defended its borders and properly protected the empire. Deciding which causes are most important is what historians constantly debate as they seek to unravel the past to find lessons for the future.
It was fun being your museum curator, and thank you for visiting the Gibson Museum of History.